Has Donald Trump's inauguration given the Liberal Party life in Canada? It sure appears that way. So, for the past year or so, I've been discussing how terribly the Liberal Party is doing in Canada. So, in terms of polling, they have just been completely underwater, with average of polls showing that a worst case scenario for the Conservative Party would still be a conservative majority government. So, under no circumstance were the Liberals even close to attaining any kind of power if an election were held soon. But things are shifting. In fact, dramatically shifting in just a week based on two polls. And we're going to see how things continue. Of course, this is early data, but trends appear to show that both Trudeau announcing his resignation and leading to a liberal leadership race, as well as Trump's inauguration and, of course, ongoing comments about Canada, have really shifted people's opinions on where they feel about or how they feel about this election and where they're going to vote. So let me start with this poll from December, just to give you an idea of how much things have shifted. So this is an Ecos poll from December 18th, showcasing that the Conservatives were sitting at 44%, Liberals at 19%. And if you map this out into an election, this would lead to a clear Conservative majority. And here is a poll from a few days ago. Frank Graves, Ecos, same pollster. Liberal Party now sitting at 33.2%, up from where they were in December at 19. Conservative Party sitting at 37, so they're down a little bit. The NDP at 14.2%, they are also down a little bit, as well as Green Party 3.6, People's Party at 3, and Bloc Québécois at 7.3. So, as Frank Graves goes on to write here, the gap is now under 4 points. The data have been rock stable with a clear decline in Conservative Party lead, which is moving this from a 25-point lead a few weeks ago. Quite astonishing. We are sampling about 250 cases each night. So these are rolling polls, ongoing polls, showing a clear dramatic shift where the Conservatives at one point were up by 25 points. Now their lead is only at 4 points, and this is really just appears to be the beginning of the trend. So I want to play a bit from Frank Graves here. He made an appearance on CBC News discussing this research and what it means regionally.
I want to ask you about the different regions. Like, where are you seeing this change? Because it must be coming in some populous regions to see such a dramatic turnaround, right? So where are you seeing some of that?
Yeah, and that might be an even more important question, because I think if we look at this in terms of the prospects for electoral outcomes, seats and so forth, the changes are really more dramatic when you look at them at the regional level. Mr. Poilievre has a stranglehold over Alberta and Saskatchewan, 60, 70%. He'd win all those seats twice, but you can only win them once. What we've seen in Ontario is a dramatic shift, largely produced by Liberal voters who had defected to the Conservatives out of antipathy to Mr. Trudeau or concerns for regime fatigue. They are now coming back, and the Liberals are now either tied or slightly ahead. I'm going to say they're tied in Ontario, but that's a 20-point elevation from a few months ago, and that's critical, particularly if they're strong in a lot of their traditional urban centers. That's a lot of seats. They're also now have moved up in Quebec, which is really surprising because they were out of the picture, but they're now within a couple of points of the Bloc who've actually gone down, and they're looking very strong in Atlantic. So, and they may even be seeing a slight rise in British Columbia. So a very different pattern of regional differences, which are very auspicious for, at this point, a Liberal recovery.
All right, so things are shifting dramatically, and it appears to be all over the country. Now, of course, largely in Ontario, where there are a lot of seats, that kind of shift is going to make a big difference, especially in those seats around Toronto and around Toronto, where they often can move from Conservative to Liberal, from election to election. So if there's a dramatic shift back to Liberals there, that can mean a lot for where the election ends up. Also, of course, we got to wait and see who the Liberal Party chooses as its leader. I think Mark Carney has a better chance at keeping this sort of momentum together than Chrystia Freeland does, who's often viewed as just, another Trudeau. But this gets to some more data. I'm also going to get to Pierre Poilievre's recent statement and some weirdness around that. But this is from Ontario, just quickly here, worth mentioning. From Main Street Research, if the federal election were held today, how would you vote? So Liberals are now leading in Ontario. Again, this was not the case before, but there is a shift over the past week or so since Trump's inauguration. Now, I want to also make clear, as CBC News writes here, polls suggest the Liberals are enjoying a rebound since the beginning of the leadership race, but more data from more polling firms is needed to determine if a real shift in public opinion is occurring. So their poll average still has conservatives up big, but again, we are talking about really early data coming in here, just over the past couple of days. Will this shift? I think it will, based on what we are seeing from two different pollsters. That said, nothing is really set in stone until we can view this data over, at least several weeks. But this gets to Pierre Poilievre's very weird statement. So he wrote here, this is just yesterday, around when all this data was coming out. Dear Mark Carney, who's one of the leadership candidates for the Liberals, if you are not just like Justin Trudeau, will you ban his ministers from your cabinet? Very odd, weird request. Seems a little desperate to me. But on top of that, the date's wrong. It's dated 2024. This is his official account sent out 2025. They didn't double check this. This goes to the incompetence that a conservative party would bring. If you can't get this right, man, can't really trust you with much else. But on top of that, look at how often Trudeau is mentioned. Reminder, again, Trudeau is stepping down. He is not going to be the leader that Pierre Poilievre is facing in the future election. Trudeau, where is it? Trudeau, 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 Trudeau. What is going on? You don't have to go back to English class. You don't need to mention the guy's name that often, but clearly this is done on purpose because they want to try and attach any leadership candidate, in this case Mark Carney, to Justin Trudeau, because this has been Pierre Poilievre's only thing. This and the carbon tax. Trudeau, 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 and carbon tax bad, carbon tax bad, carbon tax bad. That's been his entire messaging. Now that this race, this future election that's going to happen, now that it's shifting a little more because of Trump and the threat of that, in addition to the fact that Trudeau is no longer in, this party has no idea what to do in terms of their communication here. And the fact that Pierre Poilievre has essentially been really avoiding talking about Trump, I don't think has helped people's view of him as potentially the next leader. On top of that, one of Donald Trump's closest allies, Elon Musk, has been praising Pierre Poilievre. When you have somebody so close to Trump, not to mention the other things that Elon Musk has been doing recently that I'll get to shortly here, when you have someone like this praising potentially the future Prime Minister of Canada, what does that say about the impact on Canada? The kind of person that Pierre Poilievre is going to be as a Prime Minister faced with Donald Trump. Do you think he's really going to stand strong to him? Is that the impression you get from Pierre Poilievre and the sort of endorsements he's getting? So on and on, like Elon Musk here tweeting out videos of Pierre Poilievre perfectly articulated. Another masterpiece. We all saw the apple eating video. I'm not sure if masterpiece is what we thought, but this one here as well, replying to Bill Ackman, who said Pierre Poilievre is extremely impressive. He should be Canada's next leader. The sooner the better. Elon Musk replied saying 100. As the Hill Times writes here, Musk's approval of Poilievre, good for conservatives, but may not sit well for others, say pollsters and strategists. Yeah, this kind of endorsement really only appeals to people who are already going to vote for Poilievre anyways. Because when you have this clown doing this stuff, just waving a normal hand gesture to the crowd, oh yes, my heart goes out to you. That's what people do when they do that. Or was he practicing this in the mirror with this video? And then a few days, in case there was any confusion about this statement, he went on a few days later to speak to a far-right German party, telling them to move beyond their past guilt. The billionaire was received with cheers while addressing an Alternative for Germany rally where he told attendees they shouldn't be ashamed of their history. Hmm. The AfD is considered by Germany's Domestic Intelligence Service to be a suspected extremist organization. The party's youth arm and its regional AfD branches in 3 of Germany's 16 states are classified as, quote, confirmed right wing extremist. They are often referred to as Germany's neo Nazi party. These are the kinds of endorsements that Pierre Poilievre is receiving. And then he goes on, this is from early in the month, went on Jordan Peterson's podcast, which was a hell of a watch. I had to watch at 2 times speed because there's no other way I could watch this interview. But at one point, this ad came up. Preborn. Who are they? Glorifying Jesus Christ by leading and equipping the nation to save babies and souls. Access to abortion doesn't save lives, it takes lives. While Pierre Poilievre has been saying that his government would not support any legislation to regulate abortion, an ex-conservative MP came out late last year claiming the anti-abortion movement has influence inside the party. And on top of that, Pierre Poilievre's own record on abortion is not good. So the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada keeps a list of anti-choice members of parliament and has always rated Poilievre as anti-choice. He has voted consistently in favor of anti-choice private member bills and motions. No, and on top of that, I mean, his main issue that he's focusing on now is things aren't affordable anymore because of the carbon tax, even though a lot of people, in fact, most people, get more money back from the carbon tax and rebates and they put into it. But regardless, that appears to be the biggest issue to him. But he cares so much. He cares so much about affordability that corporate lobbyists are flocking to his cash for access fundraisers. He has worked his entire career in Parliament, which has been his only career in Parliament, entire career on behalf of massive corporations and against unions, against the working class. So the kinds of people he was meeting with or he's been meeting with at his cash for access fundraisers include lobbyists for oil and natural resource companies, big banks, telecoms, large retailers, and real estate investors. Yeah, he cares so much about the cost of housing, meeting with wealthy real estate investors. All right. So it is, it's unfortunate that it took Trump doing what he's doing and Trudeau stepping down for people to realize who Pierre Poilievre is. And actually, to be fair, maybe they don't realize it, but maybe they're at the point now where they just subconsciously can tell that Pierre Poilievre is not the kind of person they want leading the country when you have Donald Trump on the other side. And with Trudeau doing things like being able to bring all the premiers together, minus, Danielle Smith, who is a right-wing conservative loon, bringing all the premiers together to take a Team Canada approach and showcasing strong language against Trump and this willingness to fight these kinds of tariffs. And on top of that, you have a leadership race with Mark Carney right now as the front runner, being very strong in his language against Trump and defending Canada. Pierre Poilievre hiding a lot during that conversation. I think people are just kind of waking up to what is going on and realizing they do not want Pierre Poilievre as leader. That said, this is early data, early polling, 2 pollsters. We're going to have to see if this is a trend that continues.